What is self? We must begin with self, because self is the first word in the term. First thing first. What is self? Self is attachment to existence. We begin by developing a personality. That is the beginning of self, our personality from when we are a child. Personality is this. Please listen to it in your own experience, what I'm saying. Test if it is the truth in your own experience. For the truth is only the truth when it is the truth in your experience. Personality begins with fragmentation. That is, I love or have an interest in golf. Or if I've arranged to play golf and I love golf and I'm interested in it, and something comes along to have to make me cancel an appointment to play the game, I will feel disturbance inside of me. The person will feel disturbance. Because I have an emotional attachment to the game. Golf is separate from me, my center. I love my children. That's another fragment out there, away from my center. I love my mother, and now she's another fragment out there. My father, my home. I like or dislike my job, another fragment. Already we've got 6 or 7 fragments, and I don't have to fill in the rest for you, do I? They become emotions within me. So emotion, or this is self, these are fragments of self, create disturbance in me. By the time I've got 50 or 60 or 70 or 100 fragments of attachment to so many things, the person then, whenever it is asked a question about any of these matters it is interested in, reacts from that fragment. So they get mixed up. I often might mix up my attachment to politics. When I'm asked a question about something else, the emotion that I feel about politics I'm likely to put on my children. And we could have an argument, and even although we agree to disagree, there could be emotion inside me against my child or the person opposing me, whom I love, in another fragment of myself. So if you look at the person, and everybody begins with a person, it's a pretty fragmented and a partial type of being. Interested in this for a while, and because it's a fragment, I can't hold my interest too long, because I've got another interest over here. So I flit from thing to thing, and my psyche is disturbed because I don't seem to be able to hold my attention for long, because I've got so many emotional points in me, and they're all outside my center. That's the person, and that's the personality. And because the personality or the person is so insecure, having no center, the person becomes an unreliable guide to what I am feeling or what I am. The person then becomes a cover-up. Because I can't find really anything in myself that's substantial, I have to cover up my insecurity. So, you will always find a good personality presenting a smile when crying inside, or you've got to present a good face because I'm so insecure inside because I've got no center. If you happen to recognize yourself, please be honest and say to yourself, well, I see a bit of me in that. That's the immature stage of life as this body, the person and the personality. Self-consciousness, of course, arises out of the personality. Having no center, I am conscious of myself. Now, I have said that self is ignorance. So when I'm self-conscious, I am conscious of my ignorance. Right. After you've lived a few years, got through the youth into adulthood, say 28 on, I can only speak generally, but you get the idea, might be 25, 28, 30, 35. You enter a new stage, if you're lucky. This is the stage of individuation. Individuation of self. Individuation of self means what we call the individual, right? Individuation of self is when through experience and through joy and pain, we start to have a profounder perception of life. We know a thing or two. What happens then is that these various fragments of emotional self are pulled down, this is over the years, and they start to coalesce into a center. Not all of them, of course, come down, but sufficient of them come down into the center for the person who is now, we could say an individual, but the person still remains, there's still fragmentation there, to have a center, more authority. It's a center of ignorance, for all self is ignorance, but it is a center. And so the person will seem to be able to deliver more authoritatively of their opinions, because they have the support of the rest of the emotions that have gathered together at the center. So there's a center of ignorance, a center of self. Then you start to express yourself from that center of ignorance. You or we then go into the world to try to make our mark. Before individuation occurs, the person is pretty insecure and not very good at taking charge of people or things. But individuation usually marks that time when we start to take on the world and get really ambitious and effectively ambitious, because we're working from a good mass. The difficulty is that that mass of authority, being ignorance, is emotional, and it's based mostly on likes and dislikes. For if I like golf, I will be attached to golf. As I say, if someone cancels the appointment, I'm going to feel I want to play. I want to, you know, I like it, I want to. So there's an emotion and attachment to the golf there. And if I love my children, but every person who loves their children also becomes attached to their children. It's not the love that hurts when the child dies, it's the attachment that tears. So these emotions that come together in individuation are still attachments. And an attachment is also what I don't like. Oh, I don't like him or her. That's an attachment. That's an emotion. So in individuation, all the likes and dislikes come together and form a basis or a coalition of self. My life in the West is about self. Yours is too. And of course, underneath this self is life, this body. And this body is beautiful. I'm talking about your body. This body is beautiful. The flesh gets a little older, but that's okay. No, there's some beauty in this body. It's called life. It's not self at all. As a matter of fact, the more greedy my person or individual is, the more it destroys this little body. With emotion and tightness. Where does this come from, you know? I tell you I'm going to do so-and-so, so-and-so. Do you think that's the body talking? Oh, come on. The body doesn't want to do anything like that. It's the self in the dark inside, isn't it? Yes. So when it does that, it corrodes this body inside, gives it its emotions turn to corrosive fluids, tension, worry. And so my little body gets tense. My organs can't operate in harmony because the strain is put on it. So I feel my life is lived in this body as a tension. And then because I am filled with self, which is emotion, because that determines the life of my beautiful little body from within, I start to make my body, oh, listen to this, I start to make my little body, my beautiful brain, worry. Do you think your body's worried? Oh, please. My body sees the beauty of the flowers, like yours. But if I'm tight inside with self, even though it be individuated and not just personal self, it's individuated self, how can I see the flowers if I'm thriving and striving inside to compete and win? I can't see the flowers. There's no profit in it. You say, yeah, sure, they're flowers. Now let's get on with the important business. This is a selfish, violent, greedy civilization or world. Okay, but we've got to be practical. And we've got to be what we are, for this world is what I am. I made this world, I am man, as you are man and woman. I made this world, this society. So what I made, it's my bed, I have to sleep in it. We mustn't have any self-judgment in this. The idea is not to judge it all. The idea is to see it all, just as it is. To know myself. How do I know myself? Well, you know yourself by listening to what I'm saying now. You start to get the broader vision of what life is. There is life and there is living. Self is living. Self is the powerhouse of living. Love is the powerhouse of life. Love but don't be attached to what you love. Do your work in this society, this world that you've made, but don't be attached to it. Love your children, but don't be attached to them. Why? Because they're going to die. The saving grace of this civilization, this world that we have made, the trick up God's sleeve when he handed us the right to make a world was, I forgot to tell you, man and woman, and you'll forget this anyway, everybody dies. Every self dies. It's justice that there is death. Self always forgets. It forgets what life's about. It's about you and me being killed sooner or later. Is that news to you? Right. So at this stage we're expressing self and we drive into the world. Now there's another process going on. There's a profound process going on after individuation. A process of knowing yourself. You know yourself to be a liar. I trust this is so. You know yourself to be a phony. I trust this is not news to you. You know yourself to be a whiner and a whinger, as they say in Australia. A complainer and a blamer. Well, I don't have to say any more. We all know ourselves, don't we? Well done. I know myself. But we don't like that, do we? We really think we're beautiful. Only because someone else calls us a liar, we hit one of those emotions and we go like this and say, I'm not a liar. And he says, well, I wasn't talking about now, I was talking about yesterday. You know? We're going to lie tomorrow or today or something. We're going to blame something and complain about something. We're going to chop something down which doesn't need to be chopped down. We're going to tread on something that doesn't need to be hurt. Oh, what we are. That's all right. Don't be attached to what I'm saying, will you? Or you'll suffer. Right. Just know yourself. So while we're driving into this world and making a name for ourselves, we get to know ourselves, don't we? Even though we do it and we cover it up with a bit of personality and, you know, today always goes into yesterday, so it'll be all right. And everybody's doing the same thing, so we all forgive each other. Well, sort of. And it works okay. But then something happens through the joy and the pain, the maturity of living. Something as profound is happening down inside of me. Now, me is pretty deep. All self is in me, but me is not all self. For me is the essence or the inner state of my beautiful externalized body. Feel me? What's it like in there? Well, I'll speak from here. I'll tell you what me is like. I feel sweet in me. I am free in me. It is rather beautiful in me. I have love in me. I have clarity in me. I am at peace in me. How's it in me out there, or in there? If you are in me, where I am in me now, and why shouldn't you be? You are then in the profundity of my body, that body there, and it is sweet, and there is no age, and you are the girl or boy of 16, even if you're 50 or 60. But if you are relating at any time in your life to the self in me, instead of relating to the beauty in me, the girl or boy in me, the sweetness in me, if you relate to that stinking self in me, you will worry, you will feel guilty, insecure, worried and unhappy. There comes a time when the burden of the self in me is so great on the beauty of me that something happens. I say, I cannot stand this self, this thing that I seem to be. I can't stand it anymore. This profound change happens in some people when they've had enough of this awful self. That's because God made these bodies, God made life on earth, and God begins in me, deep down in the psyche. There is a life rising forever. Every moment, life is rising out of the depths of me, and it is renewing everything that has life. Every animal, every plant is being renewed by this rising of this extraordinary thing called life. That is intelligent. That life keeps the heart beating, the blood circulating, repairs everything with a miracle every day in this beautiful body, as it repairs this blessed earth every day despite the self's greed and corruption and pollution of it. This beautiful, glorious life that arises out of me and which I can feel this very moment as the sweetness and beauty in me, my body, but not in myself.